Ooh, welcome back to the BDGE Dynasty Fantasy Football Channel. It has been a minute. It has been an hour. It has been a day. It has been quite a while since we've gotten on the couch together and chopped it up about the thing that they call Dynasty. Yeah?
It has been quite a while.
Yeah? How's it feel? You've been holding down the fort?
I feel like I'm back at home with my new kid, right here. A couple of kids.
Damn right. You got 2 kids in real life. You got 2 kids on the couch.
It's amazing how the similarities
You're
are.
a father of like 7 at this point.
I now have sons,
Talking about sons, I'm about to son the shit out of Andrew in this episode as we talk about our updated top 30 Dynasty rookie rankings. All right, we haven't really talked about rookie rankings since maybe a week or 2 after the NFL draft, but since then, we've got free agency, we've got training camp, we've got OTAs, we've got Twitter clips, we've got everything that moves rankings way too drastically. So we're going to talk about some of the biggest movers we've had since then. We're just going to talk about our top 30 consensus rookie rankings. I don't really know how we want to do this. If we want to just talk about the biggest movers, we didn't have a lot of change at the top of the rankings here. I think we all still have Caleb 1, Marv 2, Daniels, Malik, whatever. Maybe the first guy to talk about is Malik Nabers. Andrew, you moved him up to 3. Did you have him 3 post NFL draft?
I had him 4, I think, post NFL draft. I think I basically just swapped him and Daniels. At this point, the drum beat, it's loud right now for Malik Nabers.
Is that surprising to you, though?
No, not necessarily surprising, but also, I don't know. Maybe this is me sleeping on Nabers during the draft process. Maybe this is me getting overreactive to Nabers now. I don't know, but it just feels like I didn't expect him to be as dominant as he's been in camp right now, right away.
Yeah. I mean, the noise is as loud as I've heard for any rookie, for sure. But
maybe of anybody I've seen the last 5 years, 10 years.
I mean, he was a player. I don't know. I felt confident coming into the class saying within 3 years he'll be a top 5 receiver in the league. So
I remember the first Nicky quote Malik Nabers was he's going to be a first team All Pro rookie season before landing spot.
Yeah, he probably.
Then he went to the Giants.
Had he gone to the Chargers or something, I would have doubled down on that for sure. Because I think Malik's he's so unique and he's so talented and he's so explosive and he just does everything well to the point where I think that's probably where I had him post draft and he stayed the same for me.
Moved him up 1. Sorry.
Yeah,
I just thought he's relevant because, like you said, the drum beat's been fucking nuts at Giants camp. At the end of the day, though, it's still he's become a third round, a solidified mid-third round pick almost. I've seen him in underdog, I think, at the 212, 211 sometimes. And I'm I get it, but it's still Daniel Jones throwing you. How is he possibly going to have a better year than Terry McLaurin's had in Washington or DJ Moore had in Carolina? They're good years, but his touchdown ceiling is probably 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Dynasty, different story, but.
I think Malik Nabers, obviously, the ceiling this year is pretty obvious with the offensive situation as a whole, quarterback play. But there's also no one else in that offense. I mean, this offense, you could argue last year was terrible and it lost its best player.
I don't think anybody will argue you on that. You said you could argue it was terrible. I think people will just tell you it was terrible.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could argue in the worst probably of all the NFL. But but I'm saying it was that bad and they lost Barkley. So
I know.
And then they aired all that stuff on Hard Knocks and it really got bad.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see. I'm really curious to see what his target share is in this offense.
I also think back to earlier in the offseason. You and I, Nick, we were talking a lot about Daniel Jones earlier in the offseason, about being a value and maybe an undervalued type of player. And this was before he got Malik Nabers.
Yeah.
I wonder how much Nabers can elevate Daniels.
Daniel
Jones.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think a lot of the reason that I was kind of hyped up on DJ was that I'd kind of forgotten that he tore the ACL at the very end of last year. So I was like, okay, you got this mobile quarterback, and now I kind of question how mobile he's really going to be this year. I'm worried just because he might not be as mobile as normal as he usually is, and their offensive line is just tragic too. Yeah. So it's I don't know. I can't buy Malik Nabers at his redraft price, no matter how good he looks in camp.
Yeah, I think with Nabers, though, for me, at the end of the day, it goes kind of back to what you said about target share, where, and in general for his rookie season, the ceiling is certainly, it could be lower than what we want to make it because of camp hype and all that. But he's someone, I think, his dynasty value. If we go back to this time next year, while the drumbeat might be different, we're all going to be sitting here saying Daniel Jones just sucked, dude. You know how many excuses you could make for him that his dynasty ranking will not fall. Look at Drake London and Garrett Wilson as the 2 poster childs of what Malik Nabers has baked into his value installation. That, I think, is, if you were going to make a case, in my opinion, that would be the one. If you wanted to put him ahead of Daniels, it's Daniels is a guy that could be ridiculous with his rushing upside. But if he has a pretty poor rookie season, the fall will be a lot further. That's the case to be made. If I would think if you put him at 3, I have him at 4.
Certainly, and I think too, like just like you said, even with Zach Wilson under center, which we all knew that Zach Wilson was not a good quarterback. Like we all know Daniel Jones probably isn't a good quarterback, but that was still allowing Garrett Wilson after his rookie year to be a late first, early second round pick, and he still is, like years later. And the quarterback situation never had improved over that entire time. Now we assume it will be, but still, it's just like I don't see a situation where probably over the next 3 years where Malik Nabers' value decreases.
Yeah, and I think to the point on Nabers, at least for me, I'll just say I didn't move anyone in my first 8, and part of that is because like none of those players you should be not convicted on enough in your process, I believe. And then they all got the draft capital to really be moving a ton. I'm not saying you can't move them at all, but like we knew these guys of what they were talent-wise, and they all checked the boxes of where they were. So there wasn't movement for me in any of those guys, but there's definitely cases to be made now where the situation or the value might be up or down. I think they're all still really great picks. If you made me have a rookie draft again, I kind of feel like right around 7 or 8 is where I'm starting to wonder, like, all right, I like this class quite a bit, but those first 7 picks are just different in value.
Yeah. I will say, it just, there hasn't been, I was saying this to you pre-show, as I'm updating my rankings, there were a lot fewer changes than I expected. I expected to look at the list and be like, oh, I'm moving guys up and down and like flailing them all over the place, but it still feels like the tiers are pretty set in their ways, and there hasn't been a ton of movement. I think like the biggest change I made was like in the top 20, 24, probably like 3 or 4 spots. Where
that was the same for me. 3 spots was my biggest. It was Penix.
Yeah. Okay. So you move Penix up. Yeah. We got JJ at 7 consensus, Brock Bowers at 8, BTJ, Brian Thomas at 9, Bo Nix at 10, Michael Penix at 11, Worthy at 12. I'm still the low man on the totem pole. Like the Twitter clips aren't going to do it for me. He's a guy that I just assumed would have a lot of Twitter clips because he's fast as fuck. And then when he gets shoved at the press line of scrimmage, you guys see that clip?
Yeah.
He got thrown into outer space.
Yeah.
You can't imagine the smile on my face when that shit happened.
Me either. Actually, I was like, you know what? Bump. Top 12. Put him up. Put him up.
Jay Brooks. So I moved Jay Brooks into the top 12 as my RB1 and a first-round pick. Wasn't a drastic move. I think I had him at like maybe 13 or 14, but
I moved him up a few spots too.
Yeah, I just think like maybe we're overthinking the wide receiver over running back lens here, and Brooks just feels like such a legitimate running back 1 in a couple of years that like you're going to value him so much more highly than like some back end wide receiver 2.
So the reason I did it is because for me anyway, this is going to sound like a cop out, but it's I don't want to say be ahead of the market, but I try to think about how the market's going to react. Meaning, similar conversation actually to Malik Nabers. Like Jonathan Brooks, we all know is hurt. We all know he's not going to be playing at least until 4 weeks into the season. And if his whole rookie season's a wash, I think that's what people expect. Yeah. So that means that there's a chance where he doesn't do shit this year, and his dynasty value is better next year. Which I look at the range of outcomes. I'm like, I don't know that I've ever seen that before.
Right. He has an insulated like injury red flag already attached to him. So if like he doesn't play well, it's like of course he didn't play well. Like we weren't expecting.
We knew that shit.
He has like 1 or 2 big games though, and he probably jumps up to Brock Bowers.
Like for me, it's like, all right, how do you move Jonathan Brooks up when he's not going to play now? Like why is it now? And I started thinking about that I think there's actually more reward than risk for what his value will be this time next year.
He gets a hall pass, year 1 hall pass. That's really what he gets.
I think literally the only scenario where he like flops big time is unfortunately he has another terrible injury.
Yeah.
I think it's like kind of an interesting conversation to have though too, because while that's the case for Brooks, because there were so many first round quarterbacks as well as like a tight end like Brock Bowers, you kind of have that same insulation value a little bit for almost all those players, where it's like,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, if a QB performs poorly, like, of course, you're going to be like, I wish he performed better. But at the same time, he's still a super flex quarterback where you're like, the value can't drop that much. Brock Bowers, we don't expect much as a rookie. So if he plays poorly, it's like, doesn't matter. We're always waiting for year 2, year 3. There's just a few guys like the BTJ. If he has a Quentin Johnson year, then of course, like, he's going to drop.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like tight ends and quarterbacks have a little bit of insulated floor with an injured player.
Agreed. And you can look back, like, at Kyle Pitts, for the example. Like, he didn't perform really to what we expected him to do for 3 years. And even today, he's still a top 5, top 6 tight end in dynasty drafts. Yeah. Like, I think Brock Bowers is going to find himself in that same type of situation. And I agree with you, too, on the quarterbacks. Like, a lot of why I have moved Michael Penix up, despite me not really liking Michael Penix as a prospect, he has first-round draft capital. He's in a situation where he's going to be probably just sitting in the same value. Like, everyone's going to be like, well, he was a first rounder and we're waiting for him to be the starter. Like, that could be 2 years before that even happens.
We get to see him play this weekend, though.
We do get to see him play, but it could be 2 years and he's still going to be valued the same way he is today. Nothing's going to change.
I definitely agree on the tight ends, and I think historically there's really not a case to be made on the quarterback other than, like, I'll just ask you this. I think right now when I look at this list, our rankings personally in the Dynasty rankings, just think about this. Bo Nix right now, I have it 11, Nick has it 10, and Andrew has it 10, right? Mm-hmm. We're saying that a quarterback, he was 12th overall pick? Right?
Yeah.
Is almost like the 12th pick in rookie drafts.
Yeah.
Like that, the market, I think, has already reflected that the value of a first-round quarterback isn't necessarily the same because this class is loaded with them. And then I guess my question is, for him, most people don't typically, I think, believe in the prospect. That's why his value's down this far. If he has on the field a poor year, like relative to the quarterback position, he'll still be a quarterback, so he maybe doesn't go down relative to the quarterback. Don't you think his value will, I think, it'd be a free fall? Because I look at like the 21 class. I look at recent history and say, like, I think people are getting scared of the quarterback that becomes Kenny Pickett. It's like a quarterback that had that value, and then all of a sudden it went from quarterback 32 to off the face of the earth. I think that's kind of the fear.
I could hear that, but also Kenny Pickett wasn't a top 12 pick.
Yeah.
You know, he
wasn't?
He was in the 20s.
Like 20 or something.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about it. He was 20th overall. I was thinking about he was like top 6 in rookie draft. Sorry, I got you.
Yeah,
Because he was the only first-round QB.
Correct, right.
Yeah, but like the Bo Nix feeling, we talk about this a lot in the Dynasty offseason. It's like the Dynasty community continuously fades quarterbacks that they are just set on being a bad prospect. And we've learned this lesson, it feels like, many times over and over and over again. And Bo Nix would just be another, example of the cycle there. But I also think there's a little bit of the insulation with Bo Nix still, where if he plays poorly, it's very easy to look at Denver and be like, they just have no weapons. Like, what is he supposed to do? And then they go out and sign a free agent receiver and then draft one in the first round. And, maybe Troy Franklin's like good this year. And before it's like, okay, maybe he's got like a decent weapons group there. So I think it's valid. I think we have him in the right spot, but it does make me think about, like, do I want to take Bo Nix and move him above a Brian Thomas? Do I want to move him above a Brock Bowers? Like, it's a conversation I think to be had for sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm just curious. Obviously there's Bo Nix has upside. First of all, he could be better than people expect. I think that wouldn't be hard for him to accomplish that. People think he's going to suck.
I like Bo Nix, but
you like him?
Not like love Bo Nix, but I think he's going to be solid. I think he's going to be fine.
Well, I saw like a Twitter thread. I try not to follow just like a bunch of like fantasy people on my Twitter. So when I'm going to my actual following page, it's like shit that I actually want to read. But when I go to the For You page, because so much of my content is fantasy, it shows me a lot of fantasy stuff. And like someone screenshotted a clip from like someone's blog post where it's like, I think this guy's a really good pick, but just not at his cost. It's like, how does that make sense? So he's a terrible pick. If you don't like him at his cost, then he's not a good pick.
He's a good football player. And he's just not a
right. And that's like how so many conversations in this space go, where it's like, oh, this guy's really good, and he's actually a really good pick, but just like I would never pick him where he's going. So he's not a good fucking pick.
Well, and what's actually funny about Bo Nix is, like you said, it's probably going to be the opposite of that conversation, where like a lot of people are like, I don't like Bo Nix, but he's so cheap in like, in terms of like how it's going to cost you to get him on your team.
Dude, do we remember an inaccurate Oregon quarterback from a few fucking years ago that everybody hated? Yeah, Justin Herbert. Same thing. And of course, people are going to be like, that's a dumb comparison. Bo Nix, not Justin Herbert. Same conversation we were having with Justin Herbert at the time. He's erratic. He's inaccurate. He's a bad quarterback. What a waste of a pick. They should have went with this guy.
But even then, like, I don't want to really turn this into a huge Bo Nix thing, but I just think at the cost, and Adam brings up the market, like, you're drafting him in startup drafts where? Like, outside of the top 20, 25 quarterbacks? Like,
yeah, he was like quarterback, right around there, 26-ish, yeah.
Like,
that's wild. Yeah.
Bro, you're getting a top 12 first-round quarterback as a rookie in a Sean Payton offense, as much as, there's not a lot of weapons. That doesn't seem like a player that's going to go to quarterback 32 or quarterback 35 at the end of the year. That seems more likely that Bo Nix goes to 15 at the end of the year.
Yeah, he's closer to – right. You make a good point on Herbert. There's obviously upside to be had, but most people don't believe in him, in that they are going to need to see him actually perform. But people are going to be out with their pitchforks any week that he sucks. Like, the community feels like they really don't like Bo Nix. And I mean, I get it, but that's kind of crazy.
I feel the same about J.J. McCarthy.
We had to talk about him.
Let's keep moving. Now, we're obviously talking about Dynasty rankings here. Before we get lower into the rankings, you guys probably have some actual fantasy football drafts coming up, redraft, just season long type beats. And if you are a commissioner or if you're just a good person and want to help your commissioner out, we organize all of our dynasty leagues on LeagueSafe, but obviously they have a big portion of their site dedicated to redraft leagues, right? So if you want to organize your league in terms of like payments, LeagueSafe.com is the easiest place in the world to do so. So rather than having everybody in your league paying you in different formats and trying to figure out the payout systems at the end of the year, they're completely customizable on there. So set your league up on LeagueSafe and you could just drop the link in the group chat. It's that easy to get people to pay. And if you're the commissioner and it's your first time on LeagueSafe, they are giving you $50 towards your first buy-in. So if you have a $100 buy-in league for this year, you're the commissioner, you set your league up on LeagueSafe with the link down below using our code BDGE, they're going to take $50 off your buy-in. So you're actually only paying half the price to get into the league, all right? So little Nicky Thumbnails over here is hooking you up, all right? You don't got to tell the rest of your league mates, but if you're a good person, again, send it to your commissioner. Send this little read right here to your commissioner. Have them set it up on LeagueSafe. They could drop the link in. It is that simple. LeagueSafe.com/BDGE.
Free money is very hard to come by in this economy.
Not when you listen to us, though.
Yeah, not when you listen to us. I love LeagueSafe. I use it for all my leagues. I commission like 5 of them rather than holding everybody's money in my bank account. Yeah, LeagueSafe handles it for me.
You fucking Roth IRA? No. All right, go to LeagueSafe.
Somehow in the leagues that Andrew's not commissioning in, he got the $50, but that's neither here nor there.
We don't talk about that.
Hey, hello.
You know, Oriole.
Move it down to 6.
Let's highlight Ricky Pearsall. He is our wide receiver 9, 18th overall player.
Yeah.
Now,
I call him I think he is the Joker card of Dynasty right now.
Young Rickles. So we are filming this on Thursday, August 8th. Brandon Ayuk has not been moved yet. It seems like if it's going to happen, today feels like the day it will happen, but maybe it doesn't.
Today is D-Day.
Why is that? Just because we're recording today and every time we record, something happens right after we press stop recording?
Yeah, pretty much. That happened to me like yesterday. Did you see that? My Josh Downs video?
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes after we posted.
It's almost like the fantasy community and the NFL community, they wait to like have any major news or injury or anything happen until we're done just because they don't like us.
I'm going to ask you guys a question actually because it is around Ricky P. Quickly pivot right back to Ricky P. But like, does that information on Downs move a guy like Adonai Mitchell at all for you in Dynasty? Or is Dynasty too short term for that?
Yeah, that's a little bit too short term for me.
I agree.
For the fact that Downs will probably be back by like week 2, I think, at the latest. So that doesn't move anything for me. I would say, though, I interviewed an indie beat reporter yesterday. He was one of the teams that I interviewed. And they basically said that Adonai Mitchell and Alec Pierce are battling for the other outside role.
Yeah.
Now, they could go one of two ways. He thinks that likely with Josh Downs being pretty much a slot player, they will fill that role rather than putting Pierce and Mitchell together on the field. They will have packages where Pittman moves into the slot and they use Pierce and Adonai together.
Who would fill that for them?
Anthony Gould.
Anthony Gould, yeah.
Okay.
Anthony Gould, he's the one who like filled in immediately for Josh Downs and played well at training camp. Obviously, anything could happen after the conversation I had, but he thinks that's what's more likely to happen, Pittman and then a split of Pierce and Mitchell. Had this happen like, August 30th or something, I would say, okay, Downs' season is likely cooked, or at least a very large portion of it. I'd be a little bit higher on Adonai Mitchell, but I think it's a good question to ask short term. I do want to ask about Ricky P, though. Let's say Ayuk does get moved. Ricky, like, obviously, Juwan Jennings gets a little bit of a boost. We like Debo Moore and Kittle more for this year. Ricky feels like the clear, like, replacement for Ayuk, given their play styles. He's an outside receiver. He can separate. He can run routes. Now he's in the Kyle Shanahan offense. Like, I have him at 17, which is the highest amongst all of us. Mm-hmm. You're starting to make a case for, I mean, he's a first-round receiver. I would definitely put him back above Jalen Polk. I think I might throw him above Keon Coleman, and then
I would.
I mean, go ahead.
No. I'm just,
I think you're right, hitting the nail on the head. I think he's in the Lad McConkey tier.
Well, I was
like, that's right where I put him.
That's why he's the biggest Joker card to me in Dynasty right now, because our ranking and in general where he's going in drafts, it shows how damn short-sighted people are in Dynasty still. Like, it's a first-round pick. The first-round pick of him, I think, is a signal of they definitely don't feel good about the Ayuk signing, and this is an insurance policy or more than that. If Ricky P was started on the outside in that offense, you can't tell me that I think he goes ahead of Lat McConkey. I think that's a guy that, with that type of draft capital in that offense, if he was drafted and right on draft day that happened and Ayuk was traded, let's say, to Pittsburgh a week before the draft, you know what the freaking drumbeat would be? So, it'll go crazy.
So let's say Ayuk moves. Are you taking Ricky Pearsall above Lad?
Me personally, I think I'd put him in the same tier. I liked Ladd better in the process, and I think he still checked the boxes going to the landing spot he did. So I'd have him in the same tier. I wouldn't put him ahead though.
Okay.
You guys nervous at all with Ladd? There's a lot of stuff coming out about he's dealing with injury and he's.
I mean, that's his big problem is his durability, bro.
Yeah, and like he's already at the NFL level, missing time.
It's something I think you got to bake in, but I also think like I don't know if that I want to make a career bet on a player that I think is a good player. Just like, oh, I think he's going to be banged up because everyone's going to be fucking banged up.
I think I'm concerned. I'm not like freaking out or panicked.
I just think knowing that he's dealing with that. I know you said you don't want to make the career bet. If you have to like same tier, a guy like Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey right now, based on what we know since draft process.
I have Ladd at 13, Keon at 15.
Okay.
Man, we all have Keon at 15? There's no way Andrew hated Keon this much and we all have the same ranking. That's crazy, actually.
Mm-hmm. Look, man, pre-draft, I did not like Keon. I still don't like Keon really as a player.
I still hate his ass.
But I have to rank him there.
I love Keon as a personality. I think he's super funny. But
he is actually like the most likable.
He's really likable. So is Xavier Legette. But
speaking of which, why y'all hate him?
I have to move. You have to move Keon Coleman up with the situation of Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Like that's just where.
Sure.
That's the reason why I've moved him up. You say, but yeah, when it comes down to the prospect, like I don't know. He's not typically the guy that I make the bet on.
Yeah, and I'll point this out too. You know, we talked about it a lot on redraft. If you're in a fantasy league, you know, you're playing redraft or just like one season long stuff. We obviously had the other channel where we talked about our favorite sleepers. One of the guys I highlighted was Jalen Polk. So I have him highest. I actually wasn't sure if I had him above Ricky Pearsall, but it seems to be that I do. They'll flop if Ayuk moves. But I've got Polk as my 16th overall player. He's a dude that I'm just willing to, you know, put my chips on. At this point, it's like a personal thing. It's a subjective thing. I'm really in on Polk. I loved his film, loved him as a player. I think he's going to be a starter immediately in this offense, and I think that's a huge value boost when you look at the guys around him that are getting picked. Adonai Mitchell, I don't know if he's going to be a starter. Ricky Pearsall, if Ayuk doesn't move, he's not a starter. Xavier Legette, he could be anywhere from the wide receiver 2 down to like the wide receiver 4 or 5 when the year starts. So, like, if Polk's getting onto the field immediately, then the only other thing I'm really like hoping for is if Drake May hits, then Polk skyrockets. You know, if Drake May is the next Joe Burrow, I don't see a reason why Jalen Polk can't be the next T. Higgins. So like Polk's a dude that I have enough uncertainty around the players around him that I'm like, I'm gonna bet on my guy there.
Nice.
So I love Polk all the way up at 16.
It's get your guy season, you know? I don't hate it. I mean, I started moving players around a lot more after Bowers personally. And I think actually to the point, there's tier breaks for me, but there's a jumbled mess of like, I think there are a lot of tiebreakers based on how you feel about the situation and the player. And if you're telling me Polk and Legette have anywhere from 1 spot difference to 6, I don't really have a huge problem with it. I think the range of outcomes for all these guys, though, are pretty good. That's surprisingly this far down the board in most rookie classes. You can't tell me these guys are going to have all a really good chance to get on the field and be great.
Yeah.
Want to talk about Quorum? How are we all 21 on Quorum? I thought someone was going to be lower on Quorum for sure.
I was the high man on Quorum pre-draft process, I remember, but I'm just getting a little bit more and more in on Kyren.
Let's actually have this conversation here. Blake Corum we have at 21.
Yeah.
We have Marshawn Lloyd at 22, and all of us have that exact same ranking. Then we start to move down the board where we have this group of Jalen Wright, Ray Davis, Isaac Garendo, and I put Braylon Allen in there because I have Braylon Allen in my rankings at 28. You guys have him outside the top 30.
Yeah.
Now, my thought process is this. Like, Blake Corum was a third-round pick. Marshawn Lloyd, also a third-round pick. However, the way I started to rank these running backs is if they're number 2 on their depth chart right now, like if I expect them to be the clear backup, they're kind of all starting to form a very similar tier for me, right? Like, Braylon Allen, who is my 28th ranked player, from everything we've heard, he's the guy right behind Breece Hall right now. So, like, I understand that he was a round later pick, but at this point, that doesn't really matter to me anymore. If you've earned your spot in training camp and you're the clear backup, I think there's a case to be made for, like, Isaac Garendo. I was really high on him, you know, right after the draft, but it doesn't seem like he's even close to the backup. Jordan Mason seems to be the backup, Elijah Mitchell. So, Garendo, to me, I don't see a reason why he would be above like a Braylon Allen, who is the RB2 on the depth chart right now. Ray Davis is the RB2 on the depth chart behind James Cook right now. So I'm starting to like batch them based on it's like in a redraft league when you draft and then week 1 happens and then ADP doesn't matter anymore. That's kind of where I'm at with these guys.
It's funny you went there because I was just going to say I feel like this is maybe crazy to say, but I think it's one of the more dangerous times in Dynasty to be like making trades and evaluating stuff too much, because I feel like we look back at this time in the second month of the season and we're like, God, what a conjecture season. These coaches spit so much bullshit in the air. To me, it's like, okay, in week 1, if I saw Braylon Allen being the person that's actually getting the snaps that are not going to Brees, now I think I'd probably be like, you know what, I need to move him. I saw them draft Izzy Abanikanda last year. I saw them draft already Isaiah Davis. They've invested draft capital into, I think, 5 running backs in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I just try to stay on top. Like I'll read, like these beat reporters will cover it, and then they'll do like the 53-man roster projections, which basically is telling you like who is taking snaps in what order, and if they project, and like Izzy's been left off of pretty much every 53-man initial roster. So I'm expecting them to kind of clean house there, and I'm just trying to stay on top of that. So like based on the information I have at hand, you know, I keep going back to Braylon Allen, but the point is I'm just like these running backs that we all have like 10 spots apart, 8 spots apart or whatever, they're all in very similar situations where if one thing breaks right for one of these injuries, like they're all in the same spot.
Although I agree with that, I do think in my rankings personally, I am sticking to my pre-draft conviction of evaluating the talent. And so that's kind of why I'm keeping them in somewhat of a similar order. I think for me, the only guy who I really moved down was Garendo. But other than that, like I kept Marshawn Lloyd where I had him pretty much. Like I kept Jalen Wright where I had him. And those guys are just guys that, one, I felt like were more talented, and I like their situations a little bit more than the others.
I definitely think, though, the play in general is, to your point, probably be ahead. And I think at the running back position, opportunities a large majority of it. So if I do like Braylon Allen, the home run speed, I guess I'm not convinced that he's locked in going to be the replacement for the Brees Hall injury if it was to happen. But, 100%. If you told me Brees Hall went down, he could end up being huge in that offense. He could be massive. He is home run speed.
It was more like the end of the 30, I had a bunch of like receivers that I didn't really like, and now that it's like, okay, I feel good about these guys being the RB2 on their offense, I'm just going to have them kind of jump up there. Like I didn't move Blake Orm down or Marshawn Lloyd down. They're still where they are.
Right.
I just think the gap needs to start to be closed a little bit between where the running backs were like, 38, 40. I'm like, let me just move them up because I feel better about their role.
I think overall in process, I actually don't disagree. I completely agree with the process there.
I did have the same thing, though, where like it did feel like from like low-key 22 to 28, 29, 30. Like it was just a bunch of receivers that I felt like were all similar bets.
Yeah. I just stopped putting receivers that I like don't believe in above. I feel like dudes that I feel strongly about where they're at on the depth chart right now.
Anyone else on the bottom of that 24 or 30 range here that you either moved or when you're looking at them kind of stand out?
I think one guy that I moved, I think my biggest mover in a negative way for me was Jatavian Sanders. I moved him actually, I think pre-draft process, he was my tight end 2. I think I had him as like a top 27, 28-ish range. I think I've moved him down to like 32. He moved 5 spots. I wouldn't have him in my top 30
I haven't
anymore.
heard a single good thing about him at camp. I don't know what's going on
And
there.
I think since the draft and, some of the stuff we've heard, some of the draft capital and things, like Ben Sinnott has passed him as my tight end 2 in the class. And I don't know.
Sinnott, I will say, though, Zach Ertz is like going to be their pass-catching tight end, I think, this year.
I think so. But
which is annoying as fuck.
I think
could be like a Trey McBride situation.
Yeah, it could very well be that. I'm not too worried about year 1 for Ben. But another one, too, that I felt like was, at least that I noticed that sticks out, Nick, you can talk to it, is you've moved Corley to 36, and we have him at 25 and 26.
Yeah,
so, you're just the low man on Corley here.
Yeah, I don't remember where I had him previously, but I was always the low man on him. I look at a lot of the players that were in this class that people were like, oh, they're just like weapons, like the Malik Washingtons, the Malachi Corley. Like, I just don't think they offer a lot of fantasy upside. I think they're role players that won't get more than like 50% of the snaps. Like Allen Lazard is going to be a wide receiver 2 over Malachi Corley in this offense. Right. And then as soon as Aaron Rodgers is gone, which probably be this year, if next year at the latest, it's like, what is Malachi Corley's real upside there? So he's a dude that I just don't ever really see a path to getting in my lineup, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
So like Corley's just a dude, a subjective betting against him because I just didn't think there was anything special there. I don't think he's a great separator or route runner. I think Saleh came out and like said that. He was like, he needs to work on his route running pretty heavily.
Dang.
Yeah, he's a playmaker, no doubt about it, but that's like, we knew that. Yeah. You know? I just don't think he's like a well-rounded receiver.
I didn't see that. I probably
can I say in conjecture season, like when coach speaks, so to say, like I think that that type of stuff, I actually do tend to believe. Like when they come out and say something negative directly on a player, I think they feel that strongly that they're willing to tell the media that. It's probably something to take.
Have you guys seen the Coach Speak Index on Twitter?
I have not.
So it's an account actually that like grades how coaches speak about players. They get like a reliability grade on how they talk about transactions, injuries, things like that. It's actually really cool. Like the Underdog Fantasy guys use it. Like it's a really reliable source.
I'm surprised you don't follow them.
I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to get more on X. I have a hard time being on that app. It's just so crazy.
I bring that up because
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's a really good follow. And when you are trying to navigate, a lot of the fluff and the BS through the Coach Speak, like seeing their grades and how reliable those guys have been in the past is actually a really good tool. That they actually are the guys that I said why I'm not worried about the Puka Nacua injury, because Sean McVay has like a 90% reliability when he speaks about injury.
Yeah, I found like the tweet I was talking about. I'll send it to Tony to put up on the screen, but it was like Robert Saleh was talking about how the transition for college wide receivers to the NFL is hard. He said, quote unquote, you could just use Malachi Corley as an example, right? His life was basically all bubbles and shallow crosses. That's the gist of his repertoire. One of the things he has to get great at in a hurry is route running. So it's like when the coaches notice that right away, I just feel like he's going to be schemed into getting like 1 or 2 catches a game, and that's like the extent of what we're going to get. And maybe he can develop. I'm not denying the fact that he's like a fun playmaker, but like how often do those guys work out in fantasy?
The only thing, and again, like I feel like I've been the Malachi Corley, and actually there's Theo, he watches a lot of our videos, so shout out Theo. But he was in your channel the other day, and he was actually talking about how I'm the Malachi Corley guy. I'm a big Malachi Corley guy.
You've liked him.
I must have him way too high then.
I've liked him a lot, and I just think he's a weapon. And again, I understand that he's a guy that has to develop, and we knew that. I wasn't saying he's a complete prospect. I mean, at the end of the day, look at where I have him in my rankings, right? Like I don't have him as a top 12, top 15 guy. There's a lot of work that he has to do, but you look at the opportunity that they have in New York right now. We talked about Mike Williams being on the pup, Xavier Gibson out there, like
kind of like Gibson.
Alan Lazard.
What Xavier Gibson just is doing?
Gibson's one of those.
He could be literally the player that they want Corley to be.
I started a Madden franchise, and I played with the Jets because they're like a really fun young team to build up. And Gibson was like my wide receiver too, and he became like such a good player. And now I'm like, he might be good.
So but you see my point though. Like, there's a lot of opportunity in front of him. So like, if he's talented enough to make something of that opportunity, maybe he's a guy that we look back and be like, he maybe was a little bit low. It sounds like 36.
It sounds like if he does get better at his route running in a hurry, he could be that.
Fair enough. If all of these guys improve and become good professionals, then they'll be good professionals.
I mean,
they're not good picks, or they're really good picks, just not at their cost.
Yeah. When they get at a good cost, they'll be good picks, and we'll make good players out of these dynasty players. Anyways,
I was just the one for me I'm still higher on is Roman Wilson, and just curious where you guys are on him. And it doesn't seem like I've gotten much speak at all. Like there's like been almost nothing.
And he got banged up.
He hasn't been practicing because of the ankle.
Yeah.
Rome. I mean, part of this is like if Ayuk goes there, Rome is like absolutely cooked. Johnstein.
Yeah.
Also, like everything out of Steelers camp is like Van Jefferson is the 2 there.
Yep.
Which is like a little bit disappointing.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Wouldn't be super surprising, but it would be just very disappointing.
Yeah. I just I don't know. I guess if you're getting Roman as like a slot guy only in a run heavy offense right now, I don't see it. And like pre-draft process, I was not a huge fan of Roman Wilson anyway.
I get it.
He's someone that I'm fine letting slip into the 3rd round and someone else getting him.
I agree with that as well. I think he got a lot of the Senior Bowl hype, and that got out of control. But
actually, that's kind of what I was saying. It feels like since that strong buzz, it's been very dead overall, and just Roman Wilson discussion.
Yeah, he supposedly started off pretty slow at camp, then started to pick up, and then he got hurt injured. So it's like, unfortunately, for rookies, like outside of the first rounders who get their role immediately, momentum like kind of plays a big role in that in the summer and like the beginning part of the season. So we'll see if he develops. He could be a player certainly that starts to have a much bigger role over the second half of the season if Ayuk doesn't come over. So something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yep.
So
how you doing?
I want to ask, just because I'm curious and I think it'll be fun, but if you guys were to look at your rankings right now as we have them, and we were to take a time machine to the future, who do you think is going to move up the most this time next year, and who do you think is going to move down the most? If you had to make a guess today.
This time next year?
Yeah.
This is now a prediction, like a bold claim versus anything else. Okay. Most up. Well, I mean, it'd be hard you got to go down the list probably a little bit. Let me think.
Let's go position by position.
Okay.
The most improved wide receiver? I guess the most improved QB, it's kind of hard to do that. I guess Spencer Rattler would probably be my highest.
It's not necessarily. I would say the biggest up wide receiver for me, still, I have at wide receiver 9 would be Pearsall. If Ayuk is gone and he's starting to get more reps and become someone that's scoring in a really good offense, I could see him being like what would push him not into this time next year being a conversation wide receiver 4 easy. Like why couldn't he be very well valued as Brian Thomas is? I think definitely he would be my guy to put up.
Yeah, he could move up a lot.
And I'm going to go ahead and say that's going to be the one.
I think I might.
You're going to go polk, huh?
No, I'm done talking about polk. I think that's like
he pushed him too high already.
I think it's a given for my take. I think I might say Keon.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Because there's so much uncertainty in Buffalo, and like I like Curtis for this year, but realistically, how long is he going to be a playmaker for in that receiving group? And they need to solidify a real outside receiver quickly, and I think they're going to try to make that Keon. And if he hits like Keon, so Keon's a dude where like Ricky Pearsall, I don't think he'll ever jump into that Rome tier. Right? You said Ricky can get into that like maybe BTJ conversation. Keon's a dude that if he hits, like there's no limit to where he could start being valued in dynasty wide receiver rankings.
Yeah. I'm going to go for my wide receiver. I'm going to actually say Jalen McMillan. I think he's the guy that maybe I could be the most wrong on at this current ranking. The drumbeat for him has been pretty good actually in Tampa Bay. They've been talking about him a lot. And then I also think about like long-term, how much longer is Chris Godwin going to be there? Like they may move on from him in a year or two, and he could move up quite significantly. So I'll say Jalen McMillan is my potential moves the most up.
I want to throw one more name out there. Johnny Wilson has been the 3 in Philly. So that's like I know Matt Harmon did an RP profile on him, and it was like outstanding. He was a great separator, huge size. If the Eagles can get a legitimate wide receiver 3, and it feels like they found him in Johnny Wilson, that's really fucking intriguing there. So he's someone that like I'm not sure where I ranked him. I don't think it was very far outside the top 30, but like he needs to be someone that you have a very keen eye on now.
It's just kind of funny to me too how like you talk about the Senior Bowl feels like forever ago. Mm-hmm. Roman Wilson's hype was crazy, and people were like, Johnny Wilson didn't really look that good. And let's say he didn't. How is he wide receiver 3 in Philly now? Like it doesn't matter if he didn't do great at the Senior Bowl.
That's what I'm saying.
He's 6'7".
You know real. Okay, so with that, I mean,
biggest faller?
Hashtag Nicky analysis for Johnny Wilson. You know what it is?
Okay, biggest faller.
For me, it's Brian Thomas Jr.
I was gonna say the same thing.
You could put Xavier Worthy there. Like for me, this is the problem with it, right? Top 10 picks of Malik Nabers, Roman Wilson, and Marvin Harrison Jr. We did like a data dive, deep podcast, Mike and I on South Harmon, and like those players recently just are not going to fall, and they're different. They're completely different tiers.
Yeah.
So now whoever you deem as wide receiver 4 is already just so misplaced relative to the field because of the difference in late first round pick receivers. So whether it's Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Worthy, if you have Ladd as your wide receiver 4, this time next year, there's no value insulation for any of those players. They don't have the community backing. They're not strong enough prospect profiles to not take free falls.
Yeah. On paper, BTJ should – what's going to be fucking annoying is they're going to give Gabe Davis that, like, veteran treatment where he's the starter for, like, the first 6 to 8 weeks. On paper, though, Jacksonville's got so many vacated targets, deep targets, air yards, all that stuff, which is, like, the perfect fit for Brian Thomas. So if he's good, he's going to hit. If he does not show out, though, like, it's going to be evident very clearly.
No, for sure. Brian Thomas has a still pretty wide range of outcomes, but there's just people don't want to hear it right now because we haven't seen him do anything bad or haven't seen him fail. But if Gabe Davis is more snaps than him 6 weeks in, you think that his value is not going to pretty drastically fall just that far in dynasty rankings from that point?
I agree. I'm trying to look at the board and see like anybody else that could possibly do it, but I think you're right. I mean, you just look at the wide receivers; they're the most likely. The BTJ, the Xavier Worthy, the Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, even maybe like if he goes out and has a really bad year and is getting outplayed by Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir and guys like that. Like
the problem is he's like 6 spots lower already than BTJ.
I know.
Right.
If Keon has like a kind of bad year, like he's not going to drop that much further than another 5-6 spots in the rankings.
Yeah, and so for that reason, like BTJ, he's probably the most likely to be the biggest faller. But any of those wide receivers that are being in that range could be fallers.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
The running back situation. I mean, like running backs, I feel like can take a much wider swing on like up or down.
I was going to ask. I'm glad you talked running backs here before we left. We talked about Brooks a little bit. We actually haven't made a single mention of Trey Benson.
Yeah.
Very different situation What do you think here on Benson? What do we got? 16, Andrew and I, and you have him at 19.
I have him at 19 just because I moved some receivers that I liked above him. I guess what I'm feeling right now is it seems like Benson's going to get less run as a rookie than I initially expected him to, and it feels like the drumbeat on James Conner has been pretty fucking loud. And
you said James Conner?
James Conner, the GOAT.
What's the I want a reliability index. Would you mind fact checking while you keep ranting?
Reliability?
The coach speak index
do
on.
you want me to find something? Jonathan Gannon talking about James Conner?
My other thing is like
we don't need that. I just want the.
It kind of feels like they're going to use another like back as a pass catcher too. Like I think they like Michael Carter. And Michael Carter, I mean,
it's not surprising.
Michael Carter was good at UNC, and he's also just a good pass catcher. Like that is his. He's like a Kenneth Gainwell.
He's also
to be honest.
he's trusted in the pass pro.
Right. So like I think they're going to mix in other backs. So I don't really see like a huge workload for Trey Benson now. I could see him jumping up from 19 to being a top 10 player because if James Conner's not there next offseason, his hype is going to be out of fucking control. But for right now, I don't see a huge path for his value to like skyrocket this year because I don't know how big his role is going to be. So I'm kind of just like putting him down there with the receivers who got draft capital above him.
So you got a coach speak index. They said Jonathan Gannon, this is a quote from Jonathan Gannon, says James Conner has been fantastic. He's improving his game. He looks very explosive out there, fresh, big, strong. He's going to have a very big year for us.
Well,
they've been talking about it like all, yeah.
The coach speak, I mean, we've heard that, but I'll just say he's improving. How improved is he this far along? Come on. Like, I'm already reading through. I'm already reading between the lines here.
I don't really care about that, to be honest with you. I am just more.
What was his score? That's what I was asking. Like, how reliable is the coaches in?
They didn't put a score under that quote.
Well, I was just going to say, with Benson and Brooks, part of the reason I moved Brooks almost into the first round for me, 13. And I feel like Benson and Brooks are almost similar parallels to Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr., like where Michael Penix Jr. just has baked-in value insulation because he's not playing.
You just want to, we just want to draft players who are not going to do shit, but, like, they have no risk of losing their values. That's what Dynasty rookie shit is happening.
My stance on Benson has been pretty much the same throughout this process.
You hate him.
I thought from a talent perspective, he was in contention for RB1. Like that, I just felt like he was as good as Jonathan Brooks for the most part. Like I had them as 1A, 1B. When it comes down to how I view him, he is a complementary piece to James Conner this year. You guys know how I felt or how I have felt about James Conner throughout the offseason.
All right, I was just.
What did he say? Was it complimentary?
No. Well, he was. I saw a tweet this morning. I think Ron Stewart put it out where he put up Jonathan Brooks' high school stats as a senior. He scored 62 touchdowns as a high school senior on the ground.
What the heck? Jonathan Brooks?
He has 62 touchdowns in like 11 games.
What the heck?
It was like 1 out of every 4 carries.
He's basically, all you have to do is get him outside the tackle boxes and he's gone. It's over half.
He was just so good. And this was like Texas 5-star football type shit. Like Brooks.
Is this in response to me saying that Benson was as talented as him?
It wasn't a response. It wasn't a rebuttal, but you said it. And then I thought about like how good Jonathan Brooks is, and the tweet just came to mind because it was fresh from this morning.
Makes sense.
Like L take by you for sure, though.
Whatever.
That was a roundabout way to get to the.
I think he's a complimentary piece to him this year. To me, it's James Conner 2024, Trey Benson 2025. That's the way I view it.
And then
okay.
Donald Trump.
I was gonna say this sounds like another political thing.
Stop turning everything political.
Why do you want to talk politics?
Connor Benson 2024.
Just stick to fantasy, dude. It's like enough politics. Jesus Christ.
We apologize.
You guys are going to make me look like something I'm not.
But like with Trey Benson, I think that the expectations are for him, whether you've been reasonable or not about it, for him to produce at some point this year, sooner than later, right? People don't really expect Brooks, I think, to produce much. So if this time next year, Benson, to get to the point you were talking about, biggest risers and fallers, if this time next year James Conner stays healthy and was the primary back and there's another weapon, or not, I won't want to say weapon, but player on the field that's not a running back like Michael Carter, he's gonna go down quite a bit, man.
Is Connor's on his last year of the contract?
I think is it actually? I thought he had 2 with only 1 year left. I don't actually know for sure. Okay.
Yeah. I guess my concern is like Connor, I don't know. It feels like Arizona loves him. Like this could be his last year, and then they sign him like a 2-year, $9 million deal, and it's like, fuck, James Conner is still here kind of thing. I don't know.
It's the drum beat's loud for Connor right now, and I think he is in a contract year, so I don't know. We'll see what happens, but
I also feel like the reason I talk about the coach speak index for him, I feel like this is what you're supposed to say right now. The guy that's the veteran is his backfield to lose.
And
Yes, but
for
like,
the coach speak index too, also I think because he's only been a head coach for like a year, I don't think they have enough data on him to like actually give.
Okay, that's actually, you know what? That's actually very
you're
fair.
right. Like you can't always just look at the positive. Of course, he can be a good player, but on the other side, like you can look at things like how the Rams are approaching. They're like, yeah, we want to use Blake Corum to make sure that he's like keeping Kyron healthy.
Okay,
They're not really saying that about.
Hold
Benson
on. You know what though? That brings up a good point. Last year, all offseason, the running back to own in LA was Cam Akers. Until week 1, we didn't expect Kyron to play that much. And then next thing you know, Cam Akers is pissed. He wants to trade, and he's out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I mean, I'm just saying what they tell you or what we believe all right now is not necessarily etched in stone as anything other than what is taught.
Fair, but once Kyron played and it was like evident, Sean McVay's tune totally was, it is not Cam Akers, it is Kyron Williams.
It's tough. You got to read between
But
the lines.
my point is, though, like, week 1, nobody had Kyron Williams in their lineup in week 1.
Oh, no.
Fantasy football.
Yeah, no.
Because that wasn't a thing. Of course, it's easy. Cam Akers, when he wanted to trade it, he's only going to talk about Kyron. My point is that we don't really know other than he just says what you probably should say if you're Gannon. It's his. He's not going to say Trey Benson's going to take the job from him probably in the middle of the season. Like, what's he going to say?
Yeah, fair enough.
That's fair. I will say Akers came into the year with an injury, though, late August. They had to split the time.
I
will say I drafted Kyron everywhere.
When did Akers ever not have an injury?
Do not go back in time and scroll through the old videos takes. That would be.
Don't search Cam Akers BDGE on YouTube, please.
I think he ended up giving him like every time he was on the field, he got like a carry. It was really weird. Cam like that week 1.
Yeah,
he ended up having a ton of touches for like
both
nothing.
Got a lot of
I know, it was
touches,
ridiculous.
Kyron was just really good with it, and Cam was.
And then that's when you knew it was over.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up this episode for y'all. Top 30 updated Dynasty rookie rankings. If you're looking for rankings for your actual fantasy football league for this upcoming year, we've got them available on bdge.co. Go cop the draft guide. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we will see y'all next week.
Hi.
You're